When your parents divorce, you truly lose one or both parents, either emotionally or physically. And that was the experience of my guest today. But as she says, we're not meant to go through life without the mentorship of a father and a mother. And in this episode, Nicole Rodriguez joins us to share the immense healing that she's experienced through parents who were not her own. We also discuss how her parents' divorce started with infidelity and led to her feeling abandoned and lonely. She shares the emotional numbness that she experienced and even the skepticism toward emotion itself. We also discuss perfectionism and control that she's wrestled with in an attempt to build the life and even the marriage that was the opposite of her parents. We also touch on how she felt doomed to repeat the cycle of dysfunction and divorce in her own life, but thankfully how she overcame that. And then finally, how she's struggled in relationships and marriage and what she's done, the solutions she's found to that. So much good stuff ahead, lots of wisdom. Stay with us. Welcome to the Restored Podcast, helping you heal and grow from the trauma of your parents' divorce, separation, or broken marriage so you can break the cycle. I'm your host, Joey Ponarelli. This is episode 114. We're so thrilled that so many of you have found the podcast helpful and even healing. We've heard tons of great feedback. Sandy said this. She said, "This podcast is so healing, from the insights gained to Joey's sincere acknowledgement of the pain we feel from our parents' divorce. He's one of the few people who has given me permission to grieve my parents' divorce, even though it happened decades ago, and to make me feel like I'm not crazy for needing to do so. To be able to put words and understanding to my pain has been huge. It's so encouraging to know that it's not just me and that I'm not alone. Thank you." Again, we're so happy to hear that it's been so helpful for you. We do it for you. My guest today is Nicole Rodriguez. Nicole is a presenter for the Undone Women's Conference and has been associated with the John Paul II Healing Center since its earliest days. She's a contributor to the book Undone, Freeing the Feminine Heart from the Knot of Fear and Shame. She and her husband of 29 years are parents to 3 biological sons who are now powerful intercessors in heaven. Both she and her husband have really fully embraced the call that they feel to be spiritual parents and have been blessed to share their hearts with over 30 spiritual children. And Nicole has actually studied at the Theology of the Body Institute and is a certified spiritual director. And as you can probably tell, we obviously talk about God and faith in this episode. And if you don't believe in God, you're totally welcome here. Anyone who's been listening to this podcast knows that it's not a strictly religious podcast by any means. And so wherever you're at, again, I'm glad you're here. My challenge to you is this. If you don't believe in God, just listen with an open mind. Even if you were to skip the God parts, you're still going to get a lot out of this episode. And so with that, here's my conversation with Nicole. Nicole, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor really to be here and a gift just to share some of my story with you and to just see where the Lord takes us today.
I'm excited to hear more of your story, and I already admired you and the work that you've done and you guys do at the JP2 Healing Center. So excited to go deeper into your story. To start, I'm curious, how old were you when your parents separated and divorced?
Yeah, I was 11 years old. For me, that's a very pivotal time in life for any child, really. So it was a crushing blow to my heart, honestly. At that young age. So such a sense of my world and my foundation just kind of being torn out from under me at that age, from going from a place of feeling safe and secure to such a place of feeling, where do I belong? Like, where is home? No longer having that sense of security in my own life at that point in time. So it was a real source of sadness for me, and a source of loneliness for many, many years.
Thank you for sharing all that. Mm-hmm. And I can totally relate. And funny enough, or coincidentally, I should say, I was 11 as well when my parents separated and later got divorced. So definitely can relate to the tenderness of that age and just feeling the way I often talk about it is it truly just shattered my world. I just brought a ton of pain and problems into my life, which I know we're going to get into kind of what that more specifically looked like for you. But to whatever degree you're comfortable sharing, what happened?
Well, for my parents, their divorce was basically a point with my mom and my dad of just not being able to reconcile some differences. Basically, there was a lot of infidelity, if you will, in the marriage, and just to be honest. And so for my mom at that point in time, my parents really were of no faith background. And I just mentioned that just because I think for them, it gave way to not having a particular foundation in their life of why they even came together to begin with. They were very young, 17 and 19. So they were children in my eyes in so many ways. So there's so much there in the background that led them to their divorce.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And thanks for sharing all that. And lacking that kind of common purpose. And I've heard researchers say that if you can get on the same page when it comes to what you believe in God, kind of your parenting techniques, like how you want to parent, how many kids you want to have, on the same page about in-laws, like how to handle, relationships and boundaries there, and then also how to handle money. If you can get on the same page with those four things, your chance of having a successful marriage, a stable marriage, is much higher. And so, like you're saying, that relationship with God, if that's missing and there's no like consensus there, it's going to be a lot more challenging to build something that's stable and to, again, go through life, especially the challenges, and endure and make it to the other side. So that totally makes sense. And love for you, feel free to comment on any of that, but I am curious about kind of how the breakdown of your parents' marriage and the divorce affected you.
Yeah, absolutely. It had a profound effect on me, really, in the area of being a daughter. My identity as a daughter. That particular heartbreak, it's just, I didn't know who or whose I was after this divorce. I felt so abandoned. And from that place of abandonment really came these lies that became the lens through which I saw life. Really the lie that I'm alone. No one understands me and I'll always be alone in my suffering. And so these wounds, if you will, the abandonment wound and these lies that surrounded this whole area is really hindered my ability to mature and just in my identity as a sister growing, right, and maturing, becoming a bride later on and becoming a mother. So it just impacted me in all these places of my life. And in particular, as a sister, after my parents' divorce, I remember my older siblings, just the intensity of the pain and anger that they were experiencing, that their emotions felt so overwhelming to me. Being the youngest of three, when I would go to share my own thoughts or my own feelings, I just felt incredibly paralyzed, if you will. And I felt overwhelmed and not welcomed to express myself. So I learned very quickly at that age and at that young age to really to recognize that I am powerless in these places, and I felt really weak because I couldn't make the situation change. I couldn't change the situation with my parents. I couldn't change what I was experiencing with my sister and my brother. And so with that, it's just the reality that I didn't have anyone to process my pain with, which is a terrible suffering to experience, to not have anyone to really go to and process that. So I began to believe really it's not safe to feel my emotions. And if I do, I'm going to get stuck and my needs and my emotions are just too much. So that's what I carried really into my marriage, my identity as a bride, if you will. I came into marriage with this lens of two things I like to say, really: perfectionism, abandonment, and fear holding it together. And what I mean by perfectionism is I thought that if I pray enough novenas, if I pray enough rosaries, if I check box all these lists off correctly, then I will not likely experience what my parents experienced. That if I do everything perfect, I won't be anything like my family. And so I had no idea at the time when I came into marriage that I came into marriage with all of this baggage, if you will. The lies that started to affect me as I was married was just a sense of hopelessness that somehow I'm going to be just like my family and I'm never going to change. So, and there is no hope. And that's what I was wrestling with. And I was dealing with all this pain at that point, and I didn't know how to express it or bring it to my husband. And so if you can imagine, simultaneously, I'm experiencing this pain, if you will. At the same time, I'm discovering John Paul II's writings on the theology of the body, his integrated vision of the human person, human love, and just this understanding of family life and the beauty and the goodness of what we are made and created for. So as I'm reading this incredible vision that's being laid out of what we're ultimately made for and created for in family, as a woman, as a man, it was speaking to the deepest places of my heart. It was like breaking open everything that I ached and longed for so profoundly. And it gave me an understanding of like, oh my gosh, like this is what I'm made for. I'm made for this goodness. I'm made for family life, that I'm good, my body is good, that marriage is sacred and holy. And so at the same time, I'm reading this vision, and at the same time, all these wounds and these lies are starting to erupt. And I'm starting to see, oh my gosh, how do I get there? How do I live into that vision when my life experiences do not match up to what this vision is that's being laid out for me? And recognize I was bound by all of these lies that I began to believe as a teenager, that I grew into, that I believed from my family life growing up. And so when that reality hit, I understood I needed to journey deeper into my heart, because my understanding as a daughter, as a sister, bride, and mother needed to be redeemed. It needed to be restored. All these areas of my heart, because when the foundation of being a daughter is so deeply affected, it affects every other part of my heart. It affects my capacity to be a sister to others, to love well, to be in healthy relationships, right? It affects my ability to love freely as a bride, to be receptive and open, and to give of myself fully. And it affects the capacity to be a mother. Because I can remember early on in marriage, I was a little fearful, just because of my own witness of what I saw around me. Yeah. And yet the Lord redeemed a lot of that, for sure. So that's kind of the starting point of how things started to become, just the seal was broken, if you will.
Wow. So good. And thank you for sharing so vulnerably. And I'm sorry for what you've been through. And I'm just impressed with you too. Just the pain you went through, the ways in which maybe you reacted to that were unhealthy, and then the person you are today and the healing you found. It's really inspiring and beautiful, and something I know that all of us, want. And so, gosh, I can relate to so much of what you said. And I know our listeners can too, especially just that sense of kind of being doomed to repeat the cycle of dysfunction, of divorce in your own marriage and relationships. I know that's a big fear of the young people that we work with. Like, we want better, but we don't really know how to go about that. We don't know how to go about building a healthy relationship. And again, we feel like, man, am I just destined to repeat this cycle? And statistically, it's scary to see. And I know you know this data, but like, we do statistically we're more likely, at least, to end up repeating that pattern. And so it really is a big question, and an important one, of like, how do we avoid that? How do we not go down that path? And I know your life, is just a beautiful roadmap, a beautiful testimony, a beautiful story that we can learn from and act on those lessons. So I'm so grateful that you're here. Just the abandonment, I can relate to that a lot too. And remember this sense of feeling, I was just on my own. Like, the two people that I trusted the most, my parents, once they split and, that all came to light, I was just like you said, just this profound sense of abandonment, of isolation, of loneliness, no one really there to, catch my tears and to be with me, to walk with me through all of that. And, that being impactful in and of itself. And I remember this one trauma therapist that we work with, she says that what makes a trauma is really how it's handled after the fact. If someone's there to like love you and walk with you through it, the negative effects can be mitigated in large part, maybe not entirely, but in large part. But if we're alone, if we're isolated, if we feel that abandonment, then we're going to go through life limping on and doing the best we can in many ways. But that's not like what we're meant for ultimately. So anyway, your story is just really moving and beautiful. And I can relate to so much of it. I am curious, just for everyone listening, how many siblings do you have?
I have an older sister who has since passed away, actually, and an older brother.
I'm sorry.
And then I also have a younger half brother. My father is remarried, and I have a brother that's in college.
Okay, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that too. And I'd love to go deeper into your story. Feel free to expound on anything I just said, but also I like to hone in a little bit more on that, the relationships in your life, whether those are friendships, but especially romantic relationships and your own marriage. Like, how did you see, you already mentioned a little bit of it, but I'm curious to go deeper of how you saw your parents' divorce, the breakdown of your family impact your relationships, especially your marriage.
Yeah, most specifically, well, in high school, it definitely impacted my inability to be close to anybody. Really, very protective walls around my heart. Um, and when I met Lance, my husband, it's honestly when I first met him, it was a time in my life where I was so focused on my education and school. And it was kind of a back burner idea to get involved in a relationship. But as we did grow in friendship and grow in relationship with each other and entering into marriage, yeah, that my family's divorce had a profound impact. And I thought because I was doing all the quote unquote right things, if you will, as far as in my life, going to mass, going to church, right? Praying, these particular things, which are very good. Yet the human formation and the emotional pieces that need restoration and healing are so profoundly important. And so it's so difficult. Then I found really it was like the 7-year mark in our marriage that things kind of started coming up and realizing, wow, there's a lot here. I was struggling with depression. I was struggling with just, gosh, is this what marriage really is? Is this all there is? Like questioning these things in the back of my mind. And like I said, coming across theology of the body and a lot of writings that I started diving into on the dignity and vocation of woman and just all these different beautiful letters and writings within the church itself. So all that started to give me a framework for what I was made for. But yet I couldn't get past the ache and the pain of the unresolved grief that I did not get to experience fully and enter into the sorrow, the pain that was really deeply locked and buried away inside of my heart. And I had the safety in my marriage to begin to actually experience it and feel it. Because I've really have learned that in order to enter into the pain or to grieve the sorrow or to feel all of the emotions, the anger, whatever it was that I needed to experience, there needed to be a safe space to know that I would be loved where I'm at and what I feel before I could enter the pain. And marriage naturally gives you that space. My marriage did anyways, began to give me that space to feel these things. And yet at the same time, it wasn't for my husband to carry everything. It was for him to come alongside of me and walk through it with me. And at that point, we realized I needed and we needed others to come in and help us on the journey.
Beautiful.
So it was hard. It was difficult because I felt when I would look at my husband, just this desire to love him more fully.
Yeah.
And to experience that place of like, why can't I love more deeply? Why can't I give more fully? Well, understandably so. I understand why now very clearly. Because of those places of my heart, those parts of my heart, the child, the teenager that were still experiencing the trauma and the pain of the loss, but having nowhere to go with it.
Profound. And yeah, I know everyone listening can relate to you who comes from broken families. There's so much in your story that I just want to highlight for everyone. One of the things, if I'm hearing you right, and please correct me if I'm not, that just the numbness you experienced too of kind of like shutting off your emotions because they were so overwhelming, or like you said, your siblings couldn't like really receive them, or their kind of heavy emotions overshadowed your own. And I certainly experienced the numbness thing through high school because, like I said, my parents separated when I was 11. Once it got to the point of high school, I almost had this like distrust of emotion. I almost thought it was like a bad thing because so many of my emotions, at least in the years prior, were just like these quote unquote negative emotions of just anxiety and pain and, loneliness and, sadness, depression, like all those things. So I thought the point of life in many ways was just to kind of feel nothing, be kind of stoic. And I adopted that for a while, but after a while, and I'm curious if kind of where you went with this too, I realized that there's just such an emptiness to that, and that life is meant to be more than just, getting by or trying to feel nothing, but truly embracing the good and the bad, like truly giving it the attention maybe it deserves is a better way to say it. So yeah, I think that numbness, I know it's a kind of a typical trauma response, but it's something certainly that I wrestled with for a while. And it didn't change for me until like later in high school, when my brother was actually studying over in Austria. And I was able to visit him based on like my, kind of school schedule and everything. I had some time to go visit him. And it was really through that I felt like God was inviting me to kind of open my heart a lot more and just be able to experience like all the goodness of life, all the different, colors, so to speak. And man, that certainly was a pivotal point in my life where I saw that I was meant to, emotions aren't obviously the only thing in life that only input, only bit of information, but they're part of it. Like, we're not meant to just live from our heads. We're meant to live from our hearts as well. And so that was kind of instructing for me. So I haven't talked about this in a while, but you just brought it out and I thought, yeah, I mean, really beautiful. And I'm curious kind of your experience with like battling the numbness and kind of opening yourself. And you already touched on it a bit, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just to bounce back a little bit, in high school, I definitely, I would say because of my experience with family life, I definitely started dabbling into areas I shouldn't have gone into, really, because my desire to be seen, known, and loved so deeply. So, starting to enter into relationships that weren't the healthiest, entering into drinking wasn't the healthiest thing to be doing. So all these things to numb the pain, if you will, right? And then later in life, within marriage, I think the beauty of what the Lord started doing and orchestrating through my marriage, and then orchestrating through pivotal people that He brought into our life and into my life, where the healing really began. But ahead of getting to those places, it was just, I completely can relate to the experience of having so much shame around my emotions, so much shame for feeling anger, so much shame for feeling sorrow, so much shame for like literally having any kind of emotional experience. Because when I felt anger, it was just like, it was anger explosive. It wasn't this medium,
Right.
And that's because I was never taught how to regulate and navigate my own emotions. And so much shame would come in with feeling the anger. So just such a spiral would happen over and over, right? Of this cycle around emotions. And it wasn't really until it's so beautiful and amazing, just like in my marriage, of pregnancy, actually, and experiencing the gift of being pregnant, and then actually experiencing the loss of our one son, Thomas. And I say this in such a delicate way that in that profound experience, the Lord was speaking so strongly to me about the importance of experiencing my emotions, the grieving of the loss. And as I was grieving the loss of my son, Thomas, memories were coming back of my childhood, of the abandonment and the loss I felt. So at the same time, I was grieving the loss of my son, but grieving also the loss as a child, feeling my heart as a little girl, this vulnerable place of experiencing this loss of the many times I'd cry myself to sleep at night, those memories that started coming in. And the Lord was just so saying clearly to me, this is what it means to be fully alive. It's to feel all of your emotions. And it just started breaking things open further and further for me, of entering into my emotions, of entering into these experiences and not running away from them and not being afraid. Because that would have been a moment in my life when it comes to losing a child within the womb, to run from those experiences, to run from the pain. But as I embraced it, I actually ended up embracing these other parts of my heart. That's just the beauty of God, right? Of experiencing another area that needed restoration, healing. And the Lord is so good in His economy to use one experience that's so present in the present moment, yet to attach it to other moments of my life, if that makes sense, to bring about restoration, healing.
Wow. I'm so sorry for what you went through with the miscarriages. We had a miscarriage early on, my wife and I, and definitely very difficult, impactful, and even traumatic thing to go through. So I'm sorry you went through
Absolutely.
that and in your story, but yeah, I love what you said about just experiencing like the full range of human emotions and how that's part of what it means to be fully alive, which is so true. And I think those of us again who've gone through trauma and kind of been flooded, truly flooded with an overwhelm of emotion. Again, I think we can, like we're both expressing, like we can have this like distrust of emotion, but slowly with the right people guiding you through your life, if you're in that spot of kind of feeling numb and not trusting them, you can get to a spot where you're feeling the healthy anger. You're feeling, even healthy loneliness in a way that signals to you that, okay, something needs to change here. Like I need to do something to fill my life with a relationship, with maybe mentors or with friendships and things like that. So love all of that. And man, we can do a whole episode on that, I'm sure. There was something else you said too that we've recognized in the young people that we have worked with, as well as in our own lives as a team here, and that is just the desire for perfectionism and control. And oh man, yeah, so much of my life, and even now it's something I have to battle. But so much of my life was just like that desire to control, so that nothing could go wrong, like you said so well before. And I've noticed kind of two extremes when it comes to marriage and relationships too, for people like us. On one end, we might just give up on love and relationships. Like we want nothing to do with them. Or if we do, we love at arm's length, like you expressed, and we don't really let people in.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like this abandonment of what a true relationship would look like, because we just like don't trust it. We don't think it's going to work out. Eventually it's going to fall apart. So that's like kind of one end of the extreme, just like kind of giving up on love and relationships and likely settling for the counterfeit. On the opposite end though, and I experienced both of these, we have this desire for this almost utopia, this perfect relationship that's so the opposite of what our parents had, that, we just want that with all of our hearts, that we start to, again, like we were saying, try to control and manipulate and even kind of manage it to the point where it becomes an idol, and it becomes something that we, can't realistically hold up, even if we can create some sort of facade for it. Sooner or later, our humanity and our spouse's humanity is going to come out, and we'll realize like, no, marriage is not going to be this perfect, flawless thing that's totally the opposite of what our parents had. It might actually kind of resemble what they had, but with God's grace and, the right human formation and virtues, like we're saying, you can get through those things and you can end up being in a better spot than you are now, which has kind of been mind-blowing for me as someone who comes from a broken family, that like your struggles within marriage don't need to lead to like a separation and abandonment and divorce, but it actually can lead to like a stronger bond. Like really blew my mind. So yeah, I love your wisdom there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add to the reality of when you're just touching on with healing and just the reality of, for me, I think what people need to really hear and understand, because this is what transformed my life. And it was when really pivotal players came into my life, which I call spiritual parents. A profound bishop came into our life, a foundress of a religious order came into our life, who really mirrored the father's love and the mother's love to us, a reflection of that love in our life, and a married couple, Jim and Lois. And I think 18 years did I have with Jim and Lois before they passed away. So that's 18 years of formation, right? 18 years that I did not receive within my biological family, but what the Lord brought through these individuals was a safe place to be who I was made to be, a safe place to be loved in my weaknesses, a safe place to be told that you're going to make it through this. It's going to be okay. That you have what it takes, always pointing me back to the truth. If I would not have had these particular people in my life, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be where I am today, because I needed a mother's love. I needed a father's love. We're not made to be without a mother or a father's affection and love. So even if it's not our biological parents, it's somebody, right? The Lord brings people into our life to help journey with us into these places of our hearts. And I needed that. I needed someone to journey with me into this place of my heart. I remember my spiritual mother said to me, Nicole, when you walked through that door, you came through as a little girl. I was in my early 30s. You came in as a little girl, she said, but now I see you as a young woman. I literally had to mature and grow in all of those places of my heart, all the things I missed growing up. All those marker
Wow.
points that we need. And honestly, they believed in me, they loved me really well. And to be seen and known and delighted in, and to feel like someone rejoices in your presence, like that's family life.
Yeah.
And not that family life is going to be perfect, but we all need to have that experience, because that kind of love is what heals. And if it wasn't for that kind of love in my life, I wouldn't be able to still be married. I wouldn't be able to love the way I love. I wouldn't be free as to where I am now without these individuals loving me through these moments where I just needed compassion and tenderness and kindness, so that I could have compassion and tenderness and kindness towards myself. So I could begin to grow in my own emotional life and understand what my emotions actually mean. So that was in combination with good counseling. That was solid counseling that I had in my life, that gave a language to what I was experiencing, that started putting things into context and helping me realize, like, no, actually, Nicole, that was a valid emotion as a child. Your anger,
Yeah.
your sadness, you're crying yourself to sleep at night, you're longing for your mom and dad. That was healthy, and that was normal, and that was good. I lived for years thinking that wasn't healthy, normal, and good. I don't know why. But that was in my mind, that somehow it was shameful to have a need for my mom and dad. It was shameful to have these emotions, the sadness, the sorrow, the grief, the anger, the hate. No, it was all healthy, normal responses to what I was experiencing. And to come into a place of embracing that and knowing that unlocks freedom. It unlocks the heart to
Wow.
be free. And like that's been my experience, and that's been part of my healing journey to be where I am now. I wouldn't be who I am without the individuals that came into my life to mother and father me in these places specifically, and to share life with them, to share meals, to share conversations, to share the deep places in my heart, to have them pray with me into some of these areas with healing prayer, like just encountering love in those memories that I thought were dismal and dark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we all have these places, and it's a lifelong journey. Like it hasn't ended for me. There's so much more life and joy in my life now than I would have ever had 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It just gets better and better and better. It's like a fine wine. I tell everyone, it's like you get better with age. You really do.
I love it. That's so hopeful, and I think we all need to hear that. And so thank you for sharing all that, and how beautiful that you had people in your life to mentor you and to love you and to, in a very real way, like you're saying, fill the gaps that were left by, your parents, not to shame or put them down
No.
in any way, but it's truly what happened. Like
Mhm.
you didn't get that formation and love that you needed. And so, yeah, it's beautiful that these other people came into your life and were able to kind of compensate for that, which is really amazing. So much I want to say there. I want to get deeper into your healing journey, though. Before I do, something you said before, I just want to say this for everyone listening, especially if maybe you're married and you're struggling in your marriage, or maybe you will be one day. The 7-year mark, according to data from like the US Census, is actually the typical mark for separation. And then typically, statistically, for first marriages, I'm talking about the 1 year later at the 8-year mark is when most couples get divorced. Some people call it like the 7-year itch. So a lot of struggles can come up that way. I don't understand why totally, but it's interesting that in your story, that was kind of the trend there as well. So if you are married and you're facing those struggles, or, maybe you do in the future, understand that is a pretty common occurrence, and there's so much hope and help out there for you. And we've had episodes on different resources like the Alexander House and different, resources to help you through difficult times in marriage. But I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a really interesting correlation between the data. But I'd like to go deeper into your healing story. So you already mentioned some things that were really helpful in healing for you. What else would you add in terms of kind of the biggest things that really helped you to heal from the brokenness, from the wounds that you endured from your family's breakdown?
Yeah, most definitely. Like I mentioned, counseling was a huge help. I even found, people can look this up. I'm not going to be one to give a great explanation for this, but EMDR therapy, with an incredible group. They're out of Wyoming, that I worked with, and was profoundly healing in the area when it came to these memories from my childhood around my parents' divorce and the effects after that. I found to be incredibly helpful for myself. And also just, I think is so, so needed is just, I'm going to say it over and over again, is spiritual families, spiritual parents to love. And that was incredibly huge in my life. Also for myself, healing prayer was something, and people might be asking like, what is that? What does that mean? It's just really a place of inviting Jesus into these moments, these memories of our life, and asking where he was in that situation or how he saw me, or just to experience like, what was the truth in that moment when I was believing a profound lie that I was alone and that nobody was there to care for me, and experiencing truth, the truth of where he was in that moment and how he saw me, or who I was in that moment. And experiencing that with my spiritual parents, actually at times praying with me. So these are really big areas. And for myself too, the sacramental life has been profound for me within the Catholic Church. Just the gift of the Eucharist, the gift of, the anointing of the sick, just the gift of confession, having incredible priests who have a father's heart and know how to see the truth in my own heart and call it out and call it forth. That has been incredible. Again, they're just, it's just, we're made for communion and intimacy. We can't heal by ourselves. I can't heal on my own. It's not possible. We're not made for that. We're made for intimacy, and healing comes through authentic love, and it comes in a place of safety, and it comes in a place of belonging, and just knowing that you're good, and that you're seen, that you're known, and you're loved. So it's encountering that. And I know when I first started encountering that, actually authentic love, I would walk away and feel desperate inside of like, how do I cling to this? How do I grasp to this? Like, because I was so thirsty for it. Even the good, authentic love, I was so hungry for it. It's that at first response is, oh my gosh, will I ever get this again? And having to learn that, no, this is steady. This isn't going anywhere. This is lasting. And because of coming from a divorced household, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, oh God, love can last. These people aren't going to leave me. They're going to stay with me. Something's not going to happen and go wrong. Like always living with that in the back of my mind, not necessarily as conscious of it, the fear that someone is going to leave, something's going to happen. And yet it's steadfast love that is unchanging. And when it's unchanging and our hearts begin to really receive it and know it, it starts to transform. It started transforming me from the inside out. So, those are the things that have been profound in my life. And it's been seasons of counseling.
Right. Yeah. As you enter new chapters of life, I've noticed in my own life, brokenness from your past might surface again, and you kind of need to go back into it. It's not something that's like a one and done. We like to talk about it here as like an infinite goal, kind of like fitness or health or, physical health. It's like, it's not something you just like stop one day, like, oh, I've reached the pinnacle of fitness. I'm now able to no longer work out and no longer eat healthy. It's like, no, you need to stay on top of that. And I think it's similar, just with, healing emotional wounds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say one thing I think I really learned from my spiritual father. Was 97 when he passed away. And I can remember in his 90s, and he came from a family that was secure and stable, that wasn't divorced, but he would share with me, he would wake up and say, there's just other areas of my heart that still need a little work, that the Lord's showing me that needs a little bit of restoration. He was in his 90s. And I thought, wow, like it gave me such a beautiful example of like, this is normal. Like, this is what normal actually is. And this is what healthy actually looks like. And that there's no shame. There's like no shame in the fact that there are other areas of our heart that will still need to be tended to, like that it's okay and it's good. And that's very freeing to come to a place of realizing this ache I feel, oh, it's okay that it's there. It's going to be okay. This isn't going to, I'm not going to shatter because of it. So to have visual representations of that in one's life, we need people in our life that are reflecting this truth to us, because it literally starts to rewire all those places of our thinking and our way of seeing things, to rewire it to the truth, right? To what is good and true and beautiful, even within our brains, within our minds, within our hearts.
So we're truly living life based on the truth, not some lie that we told ourselves when we were kids or that came from the wounds that we experienced. Beautiful. No, I love that. And I was curious for everyone listening, the EMDR therapy with the group in Wyoming, what was the name of the practice? And if they have a website that you remember, I'd love to give that to everyone.
It's Veritas Splendor in Cody, Wyoming. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds great. We'll link to that in the show notes, guys, in case you want to check that out as well. Nicole, I know we're close to the end of our time together here, and I wanted to just, if you would, contrast a little bit your life, kind of how it was in the past and how it is now. I know you'd say that, like we're talking about right now, we're always kind of a work in progress. There's always more work to do, more growth to be done. But I'm curious, kind of, now that you've gone through this healing journey for years now, what does your life look like now compared to how it was then?
Well, my life was defined by my parents' divorce. So my identity was defined by their divorce for many, many years. And now my identity is defined by being a daughter, and knowing who I am as a daughter. So the difference now is that divorce no longer defines my identity at all. What defines my identity, is being a daughter. And what defines my identity and understanding is now that I am able to, instead of being afraid of my emotions and feelings, I can now enter my emotions and feelings without fear, that I can experience them, that I know what it means to actually regulate the emotions and return to joy. I know what it means to experience freedom in my marriage and being able to love. I'm not perfect at any of it, but being able to embrace what's imperfect with just joy, with being okay, with knowing like, I'm okay. This is actually normal, to like have that healthy outlook on life. I'd also say just being able to be receptive and open and loving the person I am now versus the person I was, right? High school is voted most likely never to get married. The contrast is very vast now, very different.
Yeah.
It's not that I no longer am that individual. I am who I am. But it's the lies, it's the wounds that do not paralyze me and hold me in bondage anymore. There's freedom. And in life, really, I'm learning over and over again that we're always coming into greater freedom. We're always coming into a greater understanding of ourselves, into the greater glory of our marriages, a greater like restoration, if you will. We go from femininity to femininity as a woman, right? As a man, from masculinity to deeper masculinity. It's like we're always going deeper into who we're made to be. So that to me brings comfort in my life now, whereas before I wanted the perfect picture of how life was supposed to be, the utopia, right? Yeah. And within my own faith, that the utopia is the perfection of theology of the body, if you will. It's a journey there. It's a lifelong journey. And we get tastes of it on this side of heaven. So it's just, there's just more of a sense of being grounded and knowing who I am now.
Your story is so inspiring. Thank you for all of that. And I wanted to ask you too, kind of a difficult question. If your parents were listening right now, what is it that you would want them to know?
Oh, well, I would want them to know I can so freely say this with the freedom of my heart of how much gratitude I have for their lives and for the gift of their union, that I am a product of their union, and just how much I deeply love them. And I really feel the love that I have for my parents now is really due to the love that I've received through spiritual parents, the healing I've received. So now I see them with so much love and compassion and mercy. And I don't have a quote unquote need for them to fulfill something in my heart that they're not capable of doing. It's just more of a freedom to love them for who they are and where they are at. Yeah. So with my father in particular, it's a great grace. And my mother, passed away several years ago. And with that said, if I can share just a moment of a beautiful story that happened at the end of my mother's life. I always like to say that the Lord wrote the end of my parents' story with his final word of like mercy and compassion and restoration. Just in the last week of my mother's life, we had the gift to be with her, and my father came every single day just to be present. And during the last couple of days, we realized my mom was waiting for my dad to let her know it was okay to go home. And so we let him know that. And he came over and he started to have this conversation with her. And I realized this was an incredibly profound, sacred moment happening in front of my eyes. And as I saw my father letting her know, like, it was okay to go home, and that he was giving her the okay. And within several hours, she started to transition from this life to the next. And my dad was there at the end, and he said to her, it was my brother, my sister, we were all surrounding her bed. He said to my mom, he said, you're surrounded by love. He said, you're surrounded by your family and we love you. He goes, and you're going home to the Father's house. He goes, and it's okay to go home. And she breathed her last two breaths. And I would have never imagined my entire lifetime that my parents' story would be written by like restoration, mercy, and love. It was incredible, just incredible. And that forever deeply transformed my heart. And I am forever grateful for that moment. And I say that as a word of encouragement to everyone who's listening. Whether that happens with your parents isn't the point, but what the point is that you're so deeply loved by the Father, and he desires to bring restoration to every part of your heart and every point of your life. And it can look different. It doesn't have to look like it looked like for me in that moment, but it's no less as beautiful and as good, in the way that he wants to bring love and life and restoration to your heart. So it's like, he wants that for you, is my point. As much as he wanted it for me, he wants it for everyone who listens as well.
Nicole, wow. What a beautiful ending. And man, definitely brought tears to my eyes hearing that about your parents. Yeah. Wow. Oh, no words. Really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Before we close here, I just want to make sure if people want to reach out to you or make use of what you offer. First, what is it that you offer and how can people find you online? I wanted you to, if you would, give a little pitch for your book as well, the book you contributed to, if you would.
Oh yeah, Undone, Freedom for the Feminine Heart. So the book basically is, it's a beautiful book. It's written by Carrie Daunt. And basically she put together a compilation of stories of women and healing from the areas of their identity as daughter, sister, bride, and mother. And in mine, stories particularly in the area of motherhood and my own healing. So a little bit more of my story is in that chapter within her book. So you're welcome to look it up actually at John Paul II Healing Center. They'll have it online there as well, if you want to check it out. And also Undone, the women's conferences. They have so many beautiful conferences that I would recommend. If you're on your healing journey, Healing the Whole Person is beautiful. Restoring the Glory. For women, there's Undone. And yeah, there's just, a plethora of things available out there, just to let you know that's there too. As far as myself, I'm through John Paul II Healing Center. I'm online. I'm on Instagram if you want to follow me on Instagram and see the life I live and the beauty of all the spiritual children my husband and I have together. And just, you can find me there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure to link to your Instagram account there as well, and to the conferences. I know you lead those conferences as well, and you're one of the speakers, which is really amazing. So guys, definitely couldn't encourage and endorse the JP2 Healing Center enough, and Nicole's work as well alongside Dr. Bob Schuetz. So Nicole, thank you so much for being here, for sharing so vulnerably, for Yeah, just everything you've been through now it's amazing. It's a blessing. I don't know if you could have imagined that when you were going through it then, but all the pain and all the problems that you faced are now just like a huge blessing. You're able to truly guide, mentor, and even parent those of us like maybe behind the path. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much again for being here. And I wanted to give you the final word. I'm just curious, what final advice or encouragement would you give to everyone listening, especially people listening who maybe feel super broken and stuck in life because of the breakdown in their family and their parents' divorce?
Yeah, I honestly want to say to you that just like in my own life, divorce is not the final word in your life. It's not your identity. It's not who you are. That brokenness is not who you are. It's not your identity, and it's not the final word in your story. And that there's more being written with your life. There's more to the story of your life, and there's more to come. So just the reality of standing in that truth. I know it's really hard when you're feeling the intensity of the pain internally, but just to let you know that there's hope and there's healing and there's restoration. And I'm going to be praying that your hearts will receive the goodness and the beauty and truth of who you are, and that will come through the people who are currently in your life, and maybe those that the Lord wants to bring into your life. But be not afraid is the greatest words I have to say. Be not afraid of what you're experiencing, and to know there is life on the other side of it.
I love talking with Nicole. She has so much wisdom. She's obviously reflected on this a lot, and it was really good to hear her story. If you want to share your story with us, we'd love to hear it. There's 3 easy steps to do that. But for some of the benefits of sharing your story, reflecting on your story is actually healing on a neurobiological level. It makes your brain healthier by actively and constructively reflecting on your story. Writing your story is also helpful as well. There's been studies that have found that people who write about emotionally significant events in their lives are actually less depressed, less anxious, they're healthier, and they're happier. Sharing your story with someone else, again, is really helpful in healing on a neurobiological level. And also, you can give some guidance to someone who's maybe in a similar spot that you were in, but maybe they're a few steps back on the path. So if you want to share your story, it's really simple. Just go to restoredministry.com/story, or just click on the link in the show notes. On that page, you'll be guided through telling a short version of your story, just filling out a form, and then we'll take that and we'll turn it into an anonymous blog article. So if you want to share your story, go to restoredministry.com/story, or just click on the link in the show notes. That wraps up this episode. If you know someone who's struggling because of their parents' divorce or their parents' broken marriage, share this podcast with them. You'll never know how grateful and how helpful it will be to them unless you actually do it. And honestly, feel free to take like 30 seconds out and just shoot them a quick text message and say, hey, I was listening to this podcast. It's been helpful for me, and I just thought it'd be helpful for you given everything you've been through. No pressure to listen, but I know it will benefit you. Something like that, you will be shocked at how grateful that person will be, even if they don't say it now. I wish someone would have done that for me. In closing, always remember you are not alone. We're here to help you feel whole again and break the cycle of dysfunction and divorce in your own life. And keep in mind the words of C.S. Lewis, who said, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending.